It's great to talk about something like resource pools, but it's a totally different thing to jump into the lab and see it in action. So let's do this demo of how exactly we configure resource pools inside of our UCS environment. Here we are at UCS Manager. It defaults us to the Equipment tab. We're going to switch over to the LAN tab down here in order to configure our resource pools. So at the very bottom of the list is usually where Cisco stores their resource pools, and indeed here in the LAN tab there's no exception. So we have the Pools tab here, or the Pools section I suppose, and we'll see the MAC pools and the IP pools. So let's just look at the MAC address pools first. If we expand this, we're going to see that there is indeed a default pool. Now when we click on this, we're going to see that there's no MAC addresses in here. If we want to put MAC addresses into the default pool, then we will have to do it manually. Cisco doesn't give us MAC addresses by default, and I'd say that's a good thing because Cisco doesn't want to assume that the MAC addresses they provide will not be, or that they will be unique. So either way, we can populate the default pool, or we can come down to MAC pools, right click and say create a MAC pool. Here's where we'll give it a name. We'll just call this CBT-A. And what I'm assuming here is that we'll create two MAC pools, one for Fabric A and one for Fabric B. Now we can change the way that UCS assigns the MAC addresses, but for the most part, we're not going to care about it, how exactly it does that. As long as it's distributing them out, then that's all that we need to know. So we go to the next tab and we can add a block of MAC addresses. So the wonderful thing about this is as we see, it populates that OUI that we talked about, 0025B5. And just in case we were to delete this and then shoot, we need to remember what it is. Here it is, they give it right here, and they give a nice little warning message to go along with it. So either way, what we can do is we'll do what I had said earlier. We'll call this AA, and we'll start with 0000, and we'll just give this, I don't know, 256 MAC addresses. So it should go from 00 to FF here. We hit OK, and we do see that the range is from 0000 to 00FF. So we can add a second block if we want. We could make this AA, and then we'll say 01 here, and then we'll make another 256 sized block. So we'll hit OK, and now we've got two different blocks. So we've got AA1, we've got AA0, that was the original one I configured, and now I can hit finish. So there we go. Now I could create another one if I wanted to. I could right click and say MAC pool. We'll call this CBT-B, and hit next, and now our block of MAC addresses this time will have a BB here, and we'll say 256 here, and say OK, and we'll just go ahead and finish without adding a second block. That's fine. So now we have our pools of MAC addresses created. So we'll collapse the MAC pool section, we'll expand IP pools, and we see the IP pool external management. We can click on this, and once again, we click on IP addresses, and Cisco can't make assumptions on the IP addresses, so there's nothing here. So what we want to do is we probably want to add IP addresses. If we want IP4 addresses, that's the default. We can click over here and add IPv6 addresses if we so choose. So we'll come down here, click add. We're going to add a block of IPv4 addresses. So we might say in this case 192.168.100, and we'll just say .1 is the starting address. Let's just give us 100 IP addresses, and the default gateway we'll call it 192.168.100.254. Now again, we can configure the primary secondary DNS if we wanted to do that, but we'll just go ahead and skip that for now and hit OK. Now what we'll see right away is that we're going to see some of these IP addresses get assigned. So as UCS Manager is sitting here thinking about it, what it's going to realize is we've got a lot of servers. We go over to the Equipment tab here, and let's just go on to, I don't know, Chassis 5. We've got 3 physical servers right here. So we go to the LAN tab and scroll back down, take a look at this pool of IP addresses. We can click over here to the IP addresses, and we can start to see that some of them are getting assigned. Now, we don't even have anything assigned to a service profile yet. These are getting assigned to the blade. So like we see here, for example, Chassis 5, Blade 3. For that matter, we've got rack mount servers on here. And so we see again that the physical equipment is getting one of these IP addresses one at a time. Now we can go to the Equipment tab to validate this. If we go back here, there's Chassis 5. Let's just click on Server 1 here. We'll double click on it. And we can go over to the Inventory tab, followed by CIMC. Remember, the CIMC, this is how a server is managed in the UCS space. And right here we see as part of its out-of-band management IP address, it gives the whole information. It gives the IP address that was chosen. It gives that default gateway, which is exactly what we had assigned it. And so this is how we can validate which IP address goes to which one of these servers. And again, the primary use for this is going to be KVM over IP. Now we recall that it's not just the physical servers that need an IP address, but also the service profiles. Now service profiles aren't going to automatically pull an IP address, and we can see that by going over to the Servers tab here and pulling up one of our service profiles like Tester 2. And Tester 2 here, I created this. I haven't yet done anything from a management IP address perspective. We see here on the General tab that we've got this management IP address option. Now when we expand this, we see that we don't actually have a management IP right now. So if I want to be able to connect to this service profile, then I'm going to need to give it something. So the way I do that is over here on the left, I have the option to change the management IP address. So I can click this, and now I can pick which IP address pool I want to use. Now, if I had created a different pool, I could use it. However, there's nothing wrong with me using the same pool that the hardware is pulling from. So I'll select this, hit OK, accept all that, say OK, and there we go. Now we have an IP address taken from that pool that's been assigned to the service profile. But the difference here is that while the hardware is going to automatically pull an IP address, I do need to specify on the service profile which pool I'm pulling from. I hope this has been informative for you. I'd like to thank you for viewing.